Hi guys, it's Miss Carrico here, and today Leo and I are going to be showing you how to do a basic gear assembly build. And so we have our fancy light set up, and we have our build plate and all of our tools and equipment. Now I don't have my magnetic bowls with me. Those are at school, so I'm using just a lid off of a Tupperware container, but when we're in the classroom, make sure that you use your magnetic bowl so that you don't lose anything. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get this all nice and set up so that you guys get to the bird's eye view of everything. There we go. So just for time's sake, I already went in and put these on here. Now these here are the protectors from whenever you're on metal. So like if I put this just through regular metal, if you listen to it, you'll hear some grinding. And you don't want to hear that. If we put it through here like this, you can't hear anything. That's because we don't want metal grinding on metal. Eventually over time in a moving assembly, if you don't have that protection, it'll eventually wear out this axle and that'll cause problems. So I went ahead and put these in already. We have they're the black spacers that look like this with our black screws. And you put those on here with the jellyfish. One on each side, and you leave the hole here in the center. Now I am going to put in these ones here, and how I knew where to place these or how to space these is that when you go in to put the gear together, the assembly together, you want to pop on one of the gears onto the axle, pop it in place like this, and then get your other gear that's next in line and pop that through, and you want to see where, poke Leo, it will meet up. So we know that here, those gears are moving together. If I had moved it over or one closer, it'd be too far away or too close. So I just do this just to eyeball and figure out where to put those. So that's how I knew how to do that. Now when we do our other build, our next build, which is our idler gear assembly, we will do the same thing with another larger gear or whatever gear size that you're going to use for your assembly, and you just line it up along the side and you look to see where in the world would that line up. So if I were to do that with this one, I would say I'm eyeballing it, see how that overlaps. It's not going to work. So we're just going to keep moving down until we find it, and that would be where we'd place that next one. So that's how I knew that where to put those, and it's good to check those before you actually make anything permanent, because otherwise you do all the work and then you put it all together and then you go to put the gears on and they don't line up, then you have to take everything back apart again. So it's really a time saver. That those few seconds to check those things will really help you in the long run. So we're going to go ahead and put these other spacers on. It goes straight across like this. And we're going to put our screws through like that, and put a jellyfish on. Now you could spin the jellyfish this way. The way I do it is I hold on to that jellyfish, take my screwdriver, and I tighten the screw and hold that jellyfish down. It's just what works better for my hands. And everyone picks up their own style for this. There's really no right or wrong way to do this unless you're doing it unsafely, in which case you don't want to do it that way. But whether you do it from the front or the back here, it does not matter. You also want to use screws that don't have a lot of overhang. If you use screws with a lot of overhang, you have moving parts, it doesn't really affect the assembly here. But if you had a bunch of moving parts and you had an overhang, like for example this one, that moving part might rub up against that and catch and not be able to move. Here, it doesn't go out beyond the jellyfish. So where we have that spacer on, we're going to put our next one on, which is right here. Same process. take our screw, find the right size. And pop a jellyfish on there. So if I were to show you just the spinning the jellyfish method, that's the way you do that. I mean, that one wasn't too hard, but sometimes the angles are really hard to get in there. And an easy way to do that is just to hold that here like this to the side and then tighten the screw from the other side because you're able to reach that. So it just depends on what your preferences are and what you're actually able to do space wise. Leo's helping. He doesn't want me to touch it. All right, there we go. So we have this lined up here. So whenever we go to put our axle through, double check these and make sure they line up, which they do. Nice and perfect. Now what we need to do is we need to attach our gears onto the build. Now typically you'd want to use axles that are a lot shorter, but just for supplies wise, you may need to use this just for your gear assembly, a longer axle. We do have different sizes of these. It just depends on the availability of materials based on who's using what. If you are using a longer axle, you want to use it to where it's not going to necessarily hit you. I'm going to move this one out just because we have Leo helping. I don't want to bump him with that axle. So anytime we put this on here like this, we are going to tighten this down. We're going to use the screwdriver that doesn't have the ball on the end of it, and it is size 5/32 or 5/64 rather. I really can't see the measurement. There we go. In comparison to this one, which is 3/32, but it has the ball on the end of it. That's what we use for the screws. This is the one that we use for the locking nuts. Just like that. And you want to put one on the other side as well. As now it's stopping it from moving this way. And we want to stop it from moving this way now. There we go. Just like that. And you want to listen. So let's go ahead and listen. You might hear the music in the background, but let's make sure we don't hear any actual metal rubbing on metal. That's actually nice and quiet. So we're good to go. If you were to hear any metal on metal, that just means that somewhere you have some issues that you need to look into fixing, and that just might mean that you forgot to put a spacer on or something like that. So put a spacer on the back side. Right, so it's not going to want to move this way anymore, but we can still move this way. So when we put our gear on, something I want to show you. Now this lines up, but if we pushed it all the way up against where that, where it ends up to the spacer, you may notice that the actual gear, if you look down here, doesn't line up to it. So there are these little small black plastic donuts, or also known as spacers, that we're going to use, and we're just going to slip that right on there like that. Pop our gear back on. And slide into place. Now it lines up perfectly. Now the reason why we do that, why we'd want to really worry about whether or not it lines up here, is that that could cause slippage or anything like that. And you just want to prevent, to the best of your abilities, anything from going wrong. We're going to put a locking nut on here. Maybe. This one's fighting with me. All right, so this one is giving us some fits. So we are going to work with these along, and we'll just put everything back on here like this. As you use the materials, you may notice some natural wear and tear on the equipment, and you just have to make adjustments for that. So what happened here for this was that this had a little bit of a nick right here, and it wasn't letting the locking nut go on that. So just to help mitigate that till we get that fixed, we just put everything on the opposite side, and it's not that big of a deal. And so now we do need to tighten this down a little bit, just a hair. There we go. Now we want to listen again to see if we hear any metal rubbing on metal. Which we do not, so we're good to go. So this is a basic gear assembly. You would want to attach a handle back here, or whichever side you're on. You'll notice I want you to pay attention to the direction of the gears. One goes in one direction, the other goes in the opposite, so they go into the center like this. And that'll make sense when we put together our idler gear as to why we focus on that. So if you have any questions on how to assemble this, please just let me know. I know this was a really quick tutorial, but if you have any questions, just comment below the video and I can give you some direction on what to do with that.